Alright, so everything that's on this table, the buyer's going to have to take with them. So from left to right, we've got old badging and trim that was replaced on the most recent paint job. Have a little bit of extra blue paint. Have some MSD parts for the MSD distributor that's on the 455 right now. Got the original distributor, Holley choke, voltmeter, bracket, some power valves for the Holley. Also a secondary spring kit for it. I have a complete set of Holley jets and some miscellaneous gaskets and rebuild stuff in here, along with shooters and whatnot. Do you have the original intake that came off the 400 along with the carburetor? Over here, I've got the cam card for the cam that's in the 455 right now. Original timing set here, oil pump, extra set of valve springs and retainers, more retainers. Got some adjustable push rods to check the length of the valve train, and then more push rods. More push rods that were used to set up these Harlan Sharp roller rockers. Now I ran these for less than 20 hours on the 455. This is a street motor, and these things just weren't needed. These were bought new, like I said, very little time on them. They even come with their own set of springs that are used, and every bag is labeled from what cylinder I put them on for that short amount of time. And you get a complete set of those. You get the old headers that I had on the car before I switched it over to exhaust manifolds. And then here's the original 400. Now I pulled this motor out in about 2012, and there was nothing wrong with it. I just had the opportunity to put a 455 in the car, and I took it. The heads, the C-cast heads off of this is on the 455 right now. The crank is in it, along with the rods. Obviously all the pistons are there. This rotating assembly was balanced with this flywheel and the harmonic balancer that's in here. On top of that, you get a couple of sets of valve covers. You get the original AC unit with brackets, original starter. There's that harmonic balancer, and just miscellaneous bits and pieces in here. Then in this tote right here, you've got the original exhaust manifolds, original rear brake shoes and assemblies. You got the parking brake cable. The backing plates are back here. Here's the original rear drums. And then this is the original rear suspension components. You notice that this car, it being a 442, had the boxed lower control arms. The bushings are original to the car. There's the Turbo 400, along with a B&M torque converter. So if you were to come and pick this car up, you're gonna have to bring a truck with you to get all this with the car. Okay, so here's my 69 442. It is a gorgeous day here in Central Texas. Again, I got this thing painted about a year ago. I haven't done much driving to her since. In this video, we're going to go to quite a bit of detail on what all has been done to this car since I've owned it. More importantly, what's been done to it recently. I think the first thing that I want to talk about, though, is the overdrive transmission, because it's the overdrive that makes this car more fun and a daily driver if you need it to be. Alright, so when this torque converter locks up, you know it. and if you're at a low speed or coming to a stop, it's almost like it's in a whole nother gear. So to make the lockup scenario as smooth as possible and not interfere with the actual driving of the car, this schematic shows how I have it wired up, from power to all the switches in the cab, underneath the hood, to the transmission and the indicator that says, hey, this thing's locked up. So before we get into too much detail with the car itself, I want to go over this with you so that when I point these items out throughout the car and we go for a ride, it all makes sense to you, okay? So starting from the battery, battery's in the trunk. So I built these panels when I got the car painted, and right behind this one is a set of 6x9 speakers and boxes, and the battery resides back here along with an amp and the Bluetooth receiver is right there. So on the schematic, we've got a battery, we've got a set of breakers that's sending power to a fuse block. So battery, pair breakers, right, going out to the fuse block. All right, so once we're in the cab with that fuse block, I've got a brake pedal switch that is from a car that has cruise control. I'm gonna use that switch to interrupt this signal if I ever press on the brake pedal. So if I'm on the brakes, the torque converter will not be locked up. And then right above that brake pedal on the firewall, I've got a dimmer switch that I can toggle on and off with. For instance, let's say I'm on, you know, a hilly, windy road and I want 4th gear, but I don't want it to lock up. Well, then I'll just tap this switch and I can go to 4th gear, but it'll never lock up until I hit this switch again. And then in the engine compartment on the intake manifold, I've got an adjustable switch here, and the purpose of that is if I throttle it and I reduce vacuum below, right now, 9 inches of mercury, this thing will trip and it will disengage the lockup torque converter, so that you hit the gas, torque converter is unlocked, and you get all the instant RPM comes up, and you can get going the way you want to. After the switch, the wiring comes all the way back to this trunk, and I've got an adjustable timer. So your brake pedal's not hit, your switch is engaged, your vacuum is high, like you're going down the highway. Well, you're gonna have a timer here, and that timer's right now, it's set for 45 seconds. And that timer is actually right behind this plug right here. You take that plug off and you can take a screwdriver and adjust the setting of it. And that just helps out for it not engaging that transmission too quickly, or excuse me, engaging the lockup too quickly. And then now we got power going to the transmission, and now it locks up. Coming out of that same plug is an additional wire to a red indicator light in the cab that you can see when you're driving to let you know, hey, I'm locked up. Alright, so over here, when I first got the car painted back in 2004, it was this same color blue, but with black racing stripes. And I had the shop change them over to this gunmetal gray, which actually kind of matches the top a little bit better. Into here, I replaced the carpet and put Dynamat on it, and there's pictures of that on the ad. I had the seats, these are still the same coverings I had previously, but I got new foam put in both front seats and the rear bench as well. We want to show that added fuse block that's in that schematic is behind this panel here, and to access it, just undo these 2 bolts here, these 2 bolts right here, and then this comes off and your fuse block is underneath here. Coming to the cab, manual windows, manual locks. It is a muscle car, right? So here's that red indicator light right here to let you know that hey, this torque converter is locked in. I did install a vacuum gauge a while back just to help in getting that carburetor tuned up and just knowing when that lockup does occur. All right. So at the brake pedal, there's the switch, brake pedal switch, and then here's the dimmer switch for your lights. Here's that secondary switch so that you can disengage the lockup again if you want to be in 4th gear but not have that thing locked up. All right, and it's pretty intuitive. Once you do this a couple times, you don't get them confused going down the road. I did put these kick panels with speakers in them, and they never tell you have to modify your parking brake cable or parking brake pedal, but how to do that to make it work, how to cut in an angle and re-weld that thing in place, but it still works. The dash is stock, with the exception where the original AC controls were, is this vintage air unit control panel here. I bought this vintage air setup back in 2007 and had installed in 2007, 2008. So this this vintage air setup is actually quite old, and it still works. The radio does not work. And I was going to put a radio in the glove box. You see that the glove box packing is not in it right now, but hey, that gives you easy access to the AC setup if you need it. With this vintage air setup, as old as it is, the one thing that is an issue with it is that the heater control valve no longer operates. So I've got a manual valve in there right now just to cut heat to it. It's the heater control valve is stuck in the open position, so if you try to crank the AC on, it'll never get cold. So how to add that manual valve there, not a big deal. It'll be an easy fix for anybody. Let's get this top down.